In the previous life, the 7th year of being in love with my boyfriend, I died in a sudden flood. My soul did not dissipate, and I stayed by my boyfriend's side. Watching him going through life in a daze, breaking down in tears over my death. Then watching him give up everything, guarding our memories until the end. When the oil ran out and the lamp burned down, he held my photo, saying he would never let go of my hand in the next life. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of the sudden flood. With memories from the previous life, I finally managed to survive smoothly and even married him. But in the previous life, Harvey loved me enough to die for me. However, in the 5th year of our marriage, when I was just pregnant, I cheated. Chapter 1. I saw them in the hospital lobby. That girl seemed to be injured. Harvey was carrying her, rushing in from outside the hospital, pushing through all the way. He shouted, "Make way." Frantic, unable to see anyone else, didn't even see me. So when he ran past me, he accidentally bumped into me, I couldn't stand steady and fell to the ground. The prenatal examination form was stepped on by him. The nurse helped me up, picked up the prenatal examination form, and couldn't help but mutter, "Your girlfriend is precious, other people's wives and children are also treasures." 7 years in love, 5 years of marriage. Even if it was just a back view, I recognized him at a glance. I hadn't seen that girl before. Maybe a colleague, maybe a friend. Or maybe just a stranger who happened to be injured on the street. At least at that moment. I believed he loved me, believed he wouldn't betray me. But, as fate would have it, I still followed them secretly, and at the orthopedic outpatient department, I saw them again. They went into the consultation room together. The door wasn't closed properly, so I stood at the doorway, peering through the crack watching Harvey. The girl had sprained her ankle. Sitting in a chair, crying non-stop. Her necklace was exposed. Water droplet shaped, crystal clear, very beautiful. Harvey sat beside the girl, holding her hand tightly, soothing her repeatedly. "It's just a minor sprain, it doesn't hurt." The girl was still very scared, and Harvey reached out to hug her. The doctor chuckled and couldn't help but tease, "Your girlfriend is quite delicate." Harvey also laughed, wiping away her tears and soothing her in a gentle voice for a while. "Indeed, she's incredibly delicate, crying every day." Listening to Harvey's words, the girl pretended to be angry and playfully punched his chest several times. "Harvey, if you find me annoying, find me too delicate, then just don't bother with me." Harvey shook his head, his smile indulgent. "I like your delicacy too." With just 6 simple words, he calmed that girl and brought a smile to the doctor's face. They looked like a pair of young lovers deeply in love. Only I, like a thief peeking at someone else's happiness, stood in place, at a loss. Chapter 2. I never thought Harvey would betray me. We met in our youth, both abandoned orphans. The first time we met was in high school. He was being mocked as an orphan, clenching his fists but not daring to retort, looking weak and timid, much like how I used to be, so I stepped in and taught the others a lesson. Back then, I was seen as a lunatic by my classmates, a waste of space by the teachers. Anyone who dared to bully me, I would deal with them. I told Harvey, "So what if we're orphans? Director Mom is our family. The other kids in the orphanage are our siblings. We never need to feel inferior." Unable to bear it, I raised my fist to shut them up. Harvey probably hadn't seen such a fierce girl like me before. He stood still for a long time, then tentatively clenched his fist and waved it in the air a few times. He asked me, "Is it like this when you hit someone?" I laughed. "If you really can't fight, you can find me, I'll help you fight." Considering we were both orphans, I didn't charge him. At first, it was mere attraction. Later, it turned into mutual understanding. His face was excessively handsome, and my heart was moved the first time I saw him. Due to our similar backgrounds and tragic pasts, from high school to university, from superficial appearances to sincere hearts. We went through so much together, finally falling in love with each other wholeheartedly. If I hadn't died in that flood, perhaps we would have been happy for a lifetime. At least in the previous life, that's what I always thought. I detest constraints. Opposite to Harvey's quiet nature, I always wanted to see the most beautiful sceneries in the world. So, the biggest motivation for earning money was to travel around the world, release that free spirit. However, during my travels, I encountered the flood that took my life. Everything happened too suddenly. The bridge collapsed, the flood was fierce, and in the end, it took away many lives, including mine. Harvey, upon hearing about my accident, tirelessly searched for me for a full 7 days. Until my remains were dug out. He sat on the ground, covered in mud, then broke down in tears. Later, he repeatedly cut his wrists, saying he didn't want me to be alone underground, so he wanted to accompany me. In the hospital, he visited countless times. In the end, it was Director Mom who persuaded him to hold on to my memory and live well. Harvey survived but was like a walking corpse. He donated all the money he earned to the orphanage, leaving everything behind. He just held on to my photo, lived a lonely life for a few years, and then, at a young age, he suddenly passed away. So when I found out I had been reborn, I desperately escaped, avoided the flood that should have taken my life, and gave up my dream of traveling the world. Striving to become a stable person, staying by his side, never leaving again. I thought that's how my life would quietly continue to be happy. But in just 5 short years, Harvey, who once loved me so much, actually cheated. This realization brought not only sadness but also despair. Because, I'm pregnant. I gently touched my belly, this child was hard won. It's the baby that Harvey and I have been hoping for years. At first, when I had morning sickness, I thought it was just my poor health and was afraid of being disappointed. So, I didn't tell him right away. I went to the hospital alone, feeling anxious, got my blood drawn, and then saw the doctor. The doctor looked at my medical record, then smiled and said, "Congratulations, you're going to be a mother." At that moment, I was truly overjoyed. So happy that I couldn't wait to go home and share this good news with Harvey after leaving the doctor's office. But I held back. Because today is our 5th wedding anniversary. Harvey said he wanted to give me a gift, something I would really like. I could guess what he was going to give me. It would be a crystal necklace that I had been longing for a long time, but he had never agreed to sell it to me. Last month, Harvey made a special trip abroad. Later, the seller messaged me, subtly mentioning that my husband loves me very much. She said she was willing to part with it, wishing me happiness. And now, that necklace is worn by someone else. It's not just the necklace. Now, even Harvey is no longer mine. Chapter 3. Returning home, I sat on the sofa, from day to night. The steak on the table had gradually cooled, but the one who should have returned never did. It wasn't until 11:52. Harvey messaged me, saying his company had a sudden business trip, and he was currently abroad. He told me not to worry. He also said to wait for him to come back for our anniversary, and he would make up for the gift then. But not everything can come back. I blew out the candle, poured the cold steak into the trash can. Perhaps I was already mentally prepared. So when I saw that message, I wasn't as sad as I thought, but rather somewhat relieved. Relieved to know ahead of time. So I didn't prepare a candlelit dinner, but instead found a restaurant with good ratings, specially paid with Harvey's card, and had the delivery sent. Since he wasn't coming back, the fate of this delivery was the trash can, just like him. Director Mom said I had always been stubborn since I was young. If I wanted something, I would find a way to get it. But once I felt it wasn't that important anymore, no matter how deeply I loved it, I could let go, without any lingering attachment. I glanced at the time, it was exactly midnight. Sitting on the sofa, looking out at the balcony, the dark sky didn't reveal anything. I remembered the doctor's contact information I got back from the hospital. He said he would be on duty these days. Whether I wanted this child or not, I could inform him in advance. So, I messaged him. I asked him If I decide to have an abortion, can you arrange the surgery for me soon? The doctor quickly replied. He said, if you've made up your mind and there are no other issues after the examination, the earliest abortion surgery can be arranged for next Tuesday. If you decide, come to the hospital to find me. I gently touched my belly. Child, forgive me. If there's no happy family, it's better to leave early and find another set of parents. At least, it won't be so painful. Chapter 4. Before the surgery, I received an invitation from my alma mater. Harvey and I didn't attend the same university. In one city, we were at the two ends of the city, only able to meet on weekends. He always brought me green grape cake, and I bought him the school's unique osmanthus-flavored milk tea. Harvey was actually quite delicate. Likes to drink very sweet milk tea, hates wind and sun exposure, can't stand any hardship at all. So it's hard for me to forget. That year, after learning about my accident, he dug with his bare hands for 7 days and nights. His 10 fingers rotten to the point of no return, fresh blood mixed with mud, riddled with holes. My chest felt a bit uncomfortable because the Harvey in my memory truly loved me. But now, this relationship has become unbearable. I accepted the invitation from my alma mater. But I never expected that I would see them again at the school. After finishing the speech on stage, that girl stood up, holding a microphone, and asked me a question. She said, "Senior, hello. I'm Mandy, a junior student majoring in journalism. The question I want to ask today isn't directly related to your profession. I wonder if Senior is willing to answer." I nodded, sensing the provocation in her eyes. So? She knew who I was. Mandy smiled and said, "It's said that Senior was a well-known journalist before, and later returned to the family for love. After 5 years of marriage, is Senior happy? Are you afraid of the 7-year itch?" I gripped the microphone tightly, trying to suppress my emotions. Back in school, I was a rebellious girl who feared nothing. After experiencing death once, watching Harvey grieve over my death, I decided to suppress all my sharp edges and become a gentle, knowledgeable woman. But that doesn't mean I would tolerate provocation from others. So I just smiled and replied, "Feelings are unpredictable by nature. Regarding the 7-year itch you mentioned, I always believed that a man who is responsible for his family will never stray. If that day ever comes, then I can only say, he and that third party are a perfect match." I paused for a moment, then looked at Mandy, her face slightly pale. I asked her, "Junior, as women, do you think the person who becomes a third party has any shame?" Under everyone's gaze, she naturally couldn't say that being unloved is what makes someone a third party. Otherwise, she would be criticized to death. She could only grit her teeth, nod reluctantly, and force a smile. Perhaps she was angered. Mandy couldn't help but say, "But if that day really comes, as a wife, I think she's pretty useless too, she can't even hold on to her husband's heart." I laughed. It's better than being a third party. Wanting to eat what others have eaten, without considering if it's clean, but feeling proud of picking up leftovers. Of course, the South isn't any better either, just a finger snap and someone's heart can be stolen. Isn't that the same as me throwing a bone to a stray dog on the street, and the dog wagging its tail at me? What's the difference? Finishing my words, I gasped in faux surprise, covering my mouth with my hand. It's my fault, how could I compare a stray dog and a cheating man? Dogs are loyal companions of humans. But cheating men and third parties are the garbage of society, dirty at just a glance. Junior, do you think I'm right? I looked at Mandy with a smirk, my pride not allowing me to show any weakness in front of her. The long-missed claws and fangs made me feel particularly warm. Perhaps, from the beginning, I shouldn't have pretended to be someone I didn't like just for Harvey. But in this game without gunpowder, neither of us won. Harvey cheated. That proves he didn't love me that much, so I didn't win. Mandy knew he was in a relationship, but she still chose to be the other woman. Still proud and destined to be despised, not really a win. We are all quite the failures. But I have a clear conscience. I loved Harvey sincerely and passionately. It was he who betrayed me, and Mandy knowingly became the mistress. So, I am at fault for treating them wrong. After finishing the speech, I walked out from backstage. Perhaps it was intentional. From afar, I could see Mandy and Harvey, who had his back to me. He was holding a large bouquet of roses, bending down to Mandy, pinching her cheek. But Mandy looked so wronged, throwing herself into his arms, crying. Harvey held her, soothing her softly over and over. I stood still without moving. Mandy seemed to glance at me, then looked at Harvey, speaking in a voice I could hear. She asked, "Harvey, why are you so good to me?" Harvey wiped the tears from her eyes, his tone still gentle. He said, "Have you forgotten? I told you before, I used to have a recurring dream before I met you. In the dream, a girl fell into the water, and I tried my best to save her, but she disappeared. I was so sad in the dream, almost wanting to die. Then I met you, and the first time we met, you slipped and fell into the water. You really looked like that girl. Perhaps, you are the girl from my dream. And we are destined by fate. So, that's how it is." I stood there, not knowing whether to cry or laugh. With the memories from the past life that I possessed, I naturally knew this wasn't just a dream but a real pain I had experienced in a previous life. Was his memory from the past starting to recover bit by bit? Harvey said he loved the girl from his dream and then fell in love with Mandy. But he didn't know, the person from his dream was me. Does it even matter now that he knows or doesn't know? Betrayal had become an established fact. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck my lower abdomen. I couldn't help but bend over, clutching my stomach, feeling unbearable pain. Mandy, however, laughed. She tiptoed to hug Harvey, then provocatively looked at me. She asked Harvey, "So, who is more important, me or Caroline?" Harvey didn't have time to answer. Because I suddenly felt a rush of heat flowing out, sliding down my leg. Someone gasped, someone was nervous, someone protected me. And someone turned their head at that moment, locking eyes with me, full of panic. Caroline. I didn't move, just watched as he came running towards me like that. I really want to know. One day, when he finds out that the girl in his dream is me, what kind of expression will he have? Chapter 5. Harvey ran up to me, looking very panicked. Caroline, what are you doing here? Today, I wore a long black dress that reached my ankles. At this moment, my lower abdomen was hurting, fresh blood flowing down my legs, staining my white shoes, and as classmates passed by and saw this scene, they couldn't help but gasp. But Harvey, upon hearing the commotion, turned around and only then noticed me. He didn't see that I was bleeding. His eyes were just full of panic, glancing back and forth between me and Mandy. Caroline, this is a misunderstanding. Actually, today I was. Before he could finish speaking, Mandy, who was standing nearby, suddenly fell to the ground. A scream. This abrupt fall made Harvey, who was initially planning to explain anxiously, forget about disguising anything and immediately turn to run towards her. Mandy, are you okay? Harvey helped her up. It was visible that Mandy had a serious scrape on her knee, now swollen and bleeding profusely, looking quite severe. Mandy shook her head, met my gaze, and shed 2 tears. It just hurts a bit. Can you take me to the infirmary first? Suddenly, Harvey's back stiffened. Probably realizing belatedly. I, his wife who had obtained the certificate, was standing not far away at this moment, watching him interact with another woman. He turned around, looking apologetic. I'll take Mandy to the hospital first, let's talk later tonight. Harvey didn't give me a chance to speak. After saying this, he directly picked up Mandy, without even looking back, and left. From beginning to end. He never saw that I was bleeding at that moment, losing our child. I took a deep breath, feeling the pain in my lower abdomen intensify. I could feel that child slipping away from me, the pain making it hard for me to stand, so I reached out and grabbed a passing classmate. I asked him, "Excuse me, could you help me call an ambulance?" I really couldn't bear the pain anymore. Chapter 6. The child was indeed lost. The doctor said this pregnancy was already fragile, coupled with my worries, the child couldn't be saved. She was afraid I would be upset, comforting me saying there would be more children in the future. But in reality, I didn't feel that bad at all. I had already decided not to give birth, and now, due to the miscarriage, it was just a different way of achieving the result I wanted. Perhaps, this child also felt that way. Even if born in an incomplete family, it would still feel suffocated. But no matter what, the only connection between Harvey and me in this world was completely severed. Due to the miscarriage, I stayed in the hospital for a night, without receiving any calls or messages from Harvey. This meant that not only did he not come home last night, but he had been with Mandy the whole time. Being young and healthy, I could go back home the next day to rest. I didn't bring much with me, and when I left, everything was neat and tidy, except for myself, nothing else. Perhaps it was fate, or maybe even the heavens couldn't bear to see it, wanting me to make a decision quickly. So at a corner of the hospital, Harvey and I bumped into each other hastily. He was holding a pink cup and carrying a bag of breakfast, but he had already changed his clothes, not wearing the white shirt from yesterday. Some things shouldn't be dwelled upon, otherwise it would only cause unnecessary pain. But unfortunately, we met. He froze, trying to hide the cup and breakfast in his hands, but also realizing that this action was somewhat childish. Panicked and guilty, in just a few seconds, I saw him make numerous fake movements. In the end, he just smiled, a guilty smile. He asked me, "Caroline, why are you at the hospital? Do you have some business here?" His words made me chuckle in anger. I couldn't help but laugh out loud, completely unable to control myself. I told him, "Oh, I do have business. I came to the hospital to have fun." "Isn't it fun? Do you believe me?" Harvey's expression turned serious. He said quietly, "Don't beat around the bush, let's resolve our issues properly. You go home first, I promise to be home before noon, as for other matters, we'll talk about them later." "Why talk about them later? Are you in a rush to deliver breakfast to your little lover?" Early in the morning, the hospital corridors were already bustling with people. Everyone loves gossip, and upon hearing the words, "little lover," they couldn't help but eavesdrop, turning their heads at every step. Harvey was being stared at with strange looks, his ears turning slightly red. "Caroline, it's not what you think at all. Mandy and I are just ordinary friends, don't jump to conclusions. When did you become so unreasonable? Look, every man caught cheating, even when faced with mountains of evidence, still wants to shift the blame. As if self-deception could make him feel less guilty." But before I could say anything, the door of a nearby ward opened, and Mandy limped out. She was wearing a hospital gown, but being a young girl who had just started university, she couldn't hide her youthful vigor. Mandy came up to me, smiling innocently. "Caroline, you must have misunderstood Harvey. We are just ordinary friends, we met at school, and it's also because of my studies. If you have any grievances, you can vent to me, don't embarrass him in front of so many people, okay?" Such a considerate little lover, no wonder he likes her. But at this moment, all I wanted was one thing, and that was to divorce Harvey. Mandy is only in her second year of college. If her classmates and teachers find out that she, who looks so innocent, is secretly involved with a married man, do you think she'll have a face to show at school? My voice was soft but clear enough for both of them to hear. As soon as the words fell, I watched the sudden change in Mandy and Harvey's expressions. Especially Mandy, a mix of nervousness and fear, no longer the calm demeanor from before, she put on a stern face and directly questioned me. "Are you trying to mess with me at school? Caroline, you're so malicious." Harvey chimed in. "Yeah, Caroline, why are you like this? Mandy and I are just friends, don't talk nonsense, casually ruining a young girl's reputation, don't you think you're being too harsh?" Me, harsh? If it weren't for not having hit anyone in years, and still feeling physically weak now. I really wanted to scratch him. I took several deep breaths, feeling a slight ache in my lower abdomen. I dared not breathe too heavily, just quietly staring at Harvey, piercing through his clumsy lies. 5 days ago, I came to the hospital and happened to see you bringing her in, even admitting in front of the doctor that you two are in a romantic relationship. Yesterday, you said you were going on a business trip but ended up at the school, hugging and cuddling with Mandy. Harvey, I'm not blind, I can see. If you cleanly admit it, maybe I could still look at you with some respect. But you insist on telling so many lies, pinning those baseless accusations on me, calling me malicious and rotten. Don't you think you're being disgusting? By this point, I couldn't help but feel somewhat sorrowful. Someone who once loved me so deeply, willing to die for me, spend a lifetime in melancholy for me. In the end, without those obstacles and stumbling blocks, feelings became worthless. Between parting and death, you can't have it both ways. Perhaps I was just as those former classmates said, born unlucky, so it's only natural I can't find happiness. I tried to control my emotions, making myself appear calmer. Harvey, it has come to this point, what's the point of covering up anymore? Perhaps my words were too blunt. Harvey, who had just vehemently denied everything, finally fell silent. After all, every word I said. He knew deep down whether I was lying or deceiving him. He raised his eyes, restraining all his arrogance, showing emotion and guilt, opened his mouth to explain something, but I stopped him before he could. I said to him, I don't want things to get ugly. Since it's come to this, let's get a divorce. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw Mandy start to smile. To my surprise, Harvey hesitated for a moment, even looking somewhat incredulous. Caroline, we've known each other for so many years, you mentioned divorce and it's divorce. Do you have no heart left? What else? I find it quite amusing. Should I just continue maintaining a marriage with you while you keep a mistress on the side? Maybe when this mistress gets tired of you, you'll find a new one. And as for me, I'll just sit at home every day waiting for you to come back, crying every day. Does that make me a devoted person? After saying this, I made one final demand. In this marriage, you are the one at fault, so you must leave the house empty-handed. Any problems with that? I'm not stupid. Everything will be gone once you're gone. But I've worked hard for these savings over the years, finally living a good life. I can't just give it all away. This is unacceptable. Mandy didn't even think twice before rebutting, tightly holding Harvey's hand and starting to argue. Harvey, you've worked so hard for so many years, how can you just give all your money to someone else? How will we live in the future? I smiled. You were attracted to his ability to earn money, right? In that case, you can start from scratch with him. Or do you just want to reap the benefits without putting in the effort? By elevating someone, others won't be able to criticize them easily. Even if it feels difficult to accept, they'll nod along. Right at this moment, Mandy gritted her teeth and coldly said, I love Harvey as a person, not for his money. Even if he leaves empty-handed, I'm willing to start anew with him. I'm just upset that he's not worth it, actually marrying a woman like you, who only cares about money. Being money-minded is better than being deceitful. I softly responded and then took out my phone from my pocket, showing them the video I recorded yesterday. Before arriving at the hospital yesterday, I deliberately obtained this video from the classmates who were watching. It's a complete recording of the whole incident. I opened the video and let them watch. I have 2 demands, divorcing Harvey and him leaving the house empty-handed. If these 2 things aren't met, I can't guarantee where this video will end up. Pushed to this point, Mandy lost control and tried to grab my phone, but I dodged her attempts. Mandy, if you did something, you have to be willing to face the consequences. Don't think you can find excuses later on. We both studied journalism and know how dangerous rumors can be. We also know that even without evidence, public opinion alone can ruin someone. And do you both know whether you've done anything unethical or not, deep down? You know, right? Not a threat, just established facts, they're mistakes. Chapter 7. With the video in hand, Harvey had no choice but to compromise, even for Mandy's reputation. They went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to apply for a divorce. As expected, there was that 30-day cooling-off period for the divorce. Harvey, I don't care if you go wandering around or stay at another woman's place. From today onwards, the house we used to live in belongs to me, with no connection to you. After 30 days, we will be divorced, and from then on, there should be no contact whatsoever. We won't cross paths again. I don't have the habit of keeping in touch with ex-husbands. Once a decision is made to cut ties, it means we won't meet again in this lifetime. Harvey didn't immediately respond. He glanced at Mandy still waiting for him in the car, his expression somewhat complicated. Caroline, does it have to be like this? He said this with a hint of sadness, as if the one who had done wrong was me. You're the one who strayed, and now you come to ask me, don't you think you're being hypocritical? I would rather he openly admitted that he had fallen in love with Mandy, and then said he was willing to leave the house empty-handed, disappearing from then on. In that case, I would actually respect him as a man, at least in matters of the heart. But now, I just feel increasingly disappointed. Perhaps that summer, when I saw him being bullied, I shouldn't have reached out a helping hand and ended up sacrificing myself. After parting ways at the Civil Affairs Bureau, I didn't go home, but instead found a hotel to stay in for a month. During that time, I also hired a nanny. After the miscarriage, even if I was young and healthy, I needed to take care of myself. The hotel had a kitchen. The nanny would come 3 times a day to cook and clean for me, while I lay in bed every day, scrolling through my phone, looking at landscapes from around the world. That long dormant heart of mine was once again stirred. If I had never met Harvey, then the current me would probably be traveling the world, exploring mountains and rivers, instead of sitting in a room, mourning my lost love. Perhaps Mandy felt that since I brought up the divorce and didn't linger, she wanted to make her presence known in front of me, so she added me on WeChat. It was an anonymous account, not directly stating who she was. But from my intuition, this unfamiliar yet highly suggestive account must be hers. Moments. June 24th. He wasn't in a good mood today, but with me by his side, he still managed to smile. Image caption, half of a smiling face. June 25th. The weather was nice today, so I asked him to take me to an amusement park. He mentioned being afraid of heights, so I patted my chest and assured him I could protect him. It was a joy, being able to protect the one I love. Image caption, a heart gesture on the carousel. June 26th. It rained a bit, so we stayed in bed all day, watching many movies. Image caption, a messy bed. June 27th. June 28th. July 24th. Tomorrow, everything will come to an end. From then on, it will just be us, without anyone else. Image caption, a selfie of us sitting on the couch. I'm going to screenshot all these 20 or so moments posts and save them. As I reached the last one, my hand hesitated slightly, unable to resist zooming in on that photo, clearly seeing the layout of the room behind her, and suddenly feeling ridiculous. Every brick and tile in the house that Harvey and I shared was personally chosen by me. Not to mention that familiar couch, the furniture I carefully selected, no one knows them better than I do. At this moment, Mandy is lying on my couch, sleeping in the place where I used to sleep. It's a bit disgusting. I covered my mouth, ran barefoot out of bed, and threw up in the bathroom, but nothing came out, dry heaving in discomfort. Tomorrow is the day we can finally get divorced. So I didn't make a sound first, but waited for dawn, waiting for the meeting in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Harvey was very punctual. He wore a white shirt today, his hair meticulously styled, clearly prepared. I smiled. So formal? It's a pity divorce and marriage can't happen on the same day. Eccentric, making passersby unable to help but stare. Harvey pursed his lips, staring at me for a long time, until I strode into the Civil Affairs Bureau. He suddenly stopped me. Caroline. I hesitated for a moment, and he continued. I never wanted to divorce you. Truly ridiculous. After betraying me, he says he doesn't want to divorce me. Should he get away with everything? Harvey walked up to me, speaking earnestly. We've been together since high school, supporting each other for so many years. I truly love you. As for Mandy, I don't know how to explain it to you. It's an obsession that permeates my bones. If I don't take the initiative, it will make me sleepless night after night, restless. Caroline, you haven't experienced that kind of helplessness, don't understand how obsession can turn into madness, don't understand my feelings. No, I understand. I've seen his helplessness, know his obsession turning into madness. So I was willing to give up my own dreams, cut off my own wings, just to stay by his side, guarding the peace and happiness he desires most, becoming the perfect wife in his heart. But what was the result? I couldn't help but close my eyes, perhaps there was still a trace of malice in my heart. As Harvey now speaks of the past life, it's becoming clearer and clearer, many details matching up, perhaps soon, he will remember everything. Until that day. But if he discovers the one he loves is not the person beside him, remembering today's words, what kind of scene will that be? I'm curious, also waiting for the arrival of that day. But first, I have to stand still. Because I have to get divorced first, without the identity given by the law, I will just be me. Chapter 8. The divorce procedures are not complicated at all. In no time, the divorce certificate was in my hands, and I completely rid myself of the identity of Harvey's wife. After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, I directly got into Harvey's car. He was stunned, and I looked at him and said, "I'm going back to the house where we used to live. Aren't you going there too? The agreed-upon property all belongs to me, so that house naturally is mine." However, he let Mandy move in while I was away. Seeing that I discovered this, Harvey quickly explained. Mandy had a little conflict with her roommates these past few days, and her family is out of town. The young girl doesn't have much money and can't afford to stay in a hotel. Since you haven't been home during this time, I let her stay there temporarily. I even instructed her to pack up and go back to school today. He said it so naturally, completely oblivious to anything wrong with the situation. If in the past, I might have been sad. But at this moment, it's anger after disappointment, extreme anger. I couldn't help but rub my eyes. Maybe in the past, I was blind and fell in love with the wrong person. Or perhaps in this lifetime, it's not about letting me make up for regrets, but to tell me that the feelings between Harvey and me can only end in separation, not a perfect union in this lifetime. Don't force it, don't force it. So, I didn't speak, I just followed him back to that house. I no longer wanted to call it home. I rang the doorbell, and Mandy, wearing my pajamas, ran barefoot to open the door. She still held my favorite doll in her hands, bouncing and appearing at the door with a coquettish look. "Harvey, you're back." But before she could finish her sentence, she saw me behind him. She was stunned and directly asked, "What are you doing here?" According to the divorce agreement, Harvey leaves empty-handed, so this house naturally belongs to me. So, she had trespassed on private property. As soon as she heard my words, Mandy immediately teared up, looking timidly at Harvey, quickly bursting into tears. "Harvey, I called my roommates. They still don't want me to go back to school. I have nowhere else to go. If I can't stay here for a while longer, I'll really have to wander the streets. All of Harvey's assets are now under my name, even the several houses we jointly owned are now mine. He has nothing, his next month's salary already prepaid, renting a place outside, but it definitely wouldn't be as comfortable as this one." Mandy was trying to argue her case in front of me as if this could prove her importance. Just like at this moment. Harvey looked at her, his expression somewhat hesitant, and finally couldn't help but say to me, "Caroline, I've given you all the money and houses, but she has nowhere to stay now. Can you let her stay for a few more days, just a few days, please?" "All right." I didn't even think about it, I just agreed directly. This straightforward approach made Harvey and Mandy both unable to help but feel surprised. But I didn't do anything else. I just returned to the bedroom, saying that I wanted to take some important documents with me, then calmly left the room under their gaze. And then I went to Mandy's university. That was also my school. Familiar with the route, I knew when the office would be busiest and when classmates would happen to be around. I brought the video I had taken that day. And the hidden camera I had placed in the room after returning, an hour ago, capturing them coming in and out of the room, hugging and kissing. The evidence was ample, but I didn't say anything, just played the video on my phone on loop. Then I sat in a chair and cried, tears silently streaming down my face. With people coming and going in the office, there were always classmates coming to see the counselor or bringing some documents for business. Every time this happened, I wanted to hold my phone up high to make sure everyone could see. Oh, and that pregnancy test report, along with the proof of my miscarriage. I marked the time very clearly. Every single thing, there was not one thing that wronged her. Chapter 9. When I arrived at the airport, Harvey called. As soon as I answered, I heard his furious voice. "Caroline, I never thought you could be such a malicious woman. You clearly promised me that as long as I left with nothing, you wouldn't release that video. Yet you went straight to Mandy's school, destroying her reputation. You are a girl yourself, you know how important reputation is for girls. What you're doing now, don't you think it's too much? You even placed hidden cameras in the room. Your behavior has already constituted an infringement, violating mine and Mandy's image rights. According to the law, I can sue you. And Caroline, you drove Mandy to the point of attempting suicide by jumping off a bridge, do you know that? If you have an ounce of conscience left, go to the school now and explain everything, say it was all your wild speculation, help her restore her reputation, or else I will call the police." I rubbed my ears, his shouting was a bit loud, and my ears hurt a little. I told him. "You signed the divorce agreement. According to the law, that house is mine, so why can't I install surveillance in my own home? If you two couldn't control yourselves and had to be intimate in what used to be my bedroom, and I happened to see it, shouldn't I seek an explanation from her school? Also, I did promise you before, but I did indeed change my mind. What can you do about it? Call the police? Harvey, then go ahead and call the police. Don't tell me, after studying so much, you still can't see right from wrong? If the police were called, who would be more embarrassed? I think you should know that better, right? In any case, in this relationship, I am not at fault, nor do I have to take any responsibility for it. But Harvey has completely shattered the love left in my heart from the previous life. So I made that call. Hello, I want to send SF Express, the kind that can arrive today. As for the items, I divided them into 2 parts and have already placed them in advance at the express station. One part is for Harvey. Inside are 2 documents, confirming the diagnosis of pregnancy and the medical records of the miscarriage. The times on them are clearly marked, and I believe he remembers them. The other part, more important, is a USB drive sent to Harvey's company's archenemy. Chapter 10. After turning off the phone, packing my luggage, I went to another city. I thought for a long time. The source of the deepening bond between Harvey and I was that flood. Similarly, in my previous life as a soul, I followed by Harvey's side, remembering most of what would happen in the following years. For example, in 2 more months, this city would experience heavy rain, followed by a silent flood. Although not as severe as the one 5 years ago. But similarly, it would cause many houses to collapse and casualties. Since I knew the time and place, I came to this place, wrote many anonymous letters, ensuring my own safety, and sent the letters to the local emergency management bureau. After doing a lot of research in advance, I wrote the letters more formally, providing early warnings and precautions, advising on early relocation of personnel to minimize casualties. In short, I did my best to save those people. And I never left. During this time, Harvey called me many times, but I did not answer. I did not read any of the messages he sent. After all, after being together for so many years, it was enough to understand each other's personalities. So the express sent on the day I left would be enough to make his conscience uneasy for the rest of his life. That child who was once eagerly anticipated. The day she was discovered, her father was with another woman. And the day she left, her father also abandoned her mother, leaving with another woman. So, guilt, a troubled conscience. Calling me, repeatedly apologizing in the messages, ultimately just to make himself feel better. But why should I give him that chance? I am a bit malicious, unable to learn forgiveness, only hoping he will never be happy in his life. But I didn't expect that we would have that day of farewell. Chapter 11. On the day the flood broke out, the palace had already arranged for dredging in advance. But some people refused to leave. When help was needed, following memories from my past life, I found those people who had been trapped for a long time. Several days and nights without sleep. In the end, just when I thought it was about to end, I found that the last person I saved was Harvey. He was holding onto a piece of driftwood, spitting out water, calling for help repeatedly. He was still holding a child in his arms, the child wearing a blue dress tightly wrapped around his neck, crying in fear. I felt a bit malicious, wanting to ignore him, but I couldn't pretend not to see the child. In these 5 years, I had learned to swim and also picked up some life-saving skills in these few days, successfully saving them. At the moment of rescue, Harvey hugged me tightly. Caroline, I remember everything now. Chapter 12. Outside the hospital, Harvey stood in front of me. He hadn't changed his clothes, completely soaked, looking quite disheveled. Caroline, When did you remember? I interrupted him, and Harvey opened his mouth, then couldn't help but smile bitterly. He said, I started having dreams a long time ago. Later, when I met Mandy, I thought the person in my dreams was her. Then, when we were about to divorce, those days I almost spent the whole night dreaming, but I couldn't see the face clearly. After getting the divorce papers, Mandy jumped into the river, and I followed. That night I had a high fever, ended up in the hospital, saw the medical records you sent me. That night I dreamed of many things. I still couldn't see that face clearly, but I was sure that the girl in my dreams wasn't Mandy. Later, some memories slowly came back. This city would flood at this time. I wasn't sure if it was real or just a dream, so I came to verify, unexpectedly encountering the flood. When I was swept away by the flood, I saw that little girl, wearing a blue dress, very similar to the girl in my dreams. At that moment, I closed my eyes, and your figure appeared before me. He paused, then suddenly started laughing, as if self-mocking. Then, my mind wandered, as if I had lived a lifetime. And in this current life, it took me a long time to finally achieve completeness. But in the end, I still managed to lose it. By the time Harvey finished speaking, tears were streaming down his face, a mix of hatred and sorrow in his eyes, trying to reach out to touch me. But I avoided his touch. Harvey, I thought this lifetime was a chance given to you by fate. But I didn't expect that maybe this is fate telling me that parting in life and death is our destined ending. In parting, in each other's memories, we are still that beautiful couple from the beginning. But now, we are both alive, and that relationship we once held sacred has become more and more unbearable because of you, Harvey. Regretting doesn't mean we can start over. There is no future between us. When he identified himself as Mandy's boyfriend. When I was pregnant, he found excuses to be with Mandy. When I miscarried, he was still with Mandy. And many nights I didn't know about, those sickening nights, were something I could never stomach. Listening to my words, Harvey's tears fell uncontrollably as he shook his head. Caroline, I just chose the wrong person, but all this time, I have only loved you. And so? Am I supposed to forgive your betrayal? But I couldn't be kind and forgiving to him after he betrayed me. So I told him. Because you betrayed me first, I want you to leave with nothing, even use your sworn enemy to make you lose your job. All your hard work over the years has come to nothing, you have nothing now. This is my punishment for you. And all the pain and regret you're feeling now, every night for the rest of your life, you will remember it over and over again in your dreams. Harvey, I won't forgive you, and that child who came into this world and left won't forgive you either. From now on, you will suffer for a lifetime, full of regrets. Chapter 13. I plan to continue pursuing my dreams. Travel the world, see the world. There's a lot of money in the bank, enough to support me in achieving my dreams, not staying in one place struggling in pain. Occasionally, news of old acquaintances from afar reaches me. Harvey and Mandy eventually broke up. I caused a scene at the school, and given her tense relationship with her roommates, her roommate took advantage of the situation, making it widely known throughout the school, even trending in the city, with too much discussion. Eventually, the school advised Mandy to leave and return to her hometown. The girl who used to stay up late at night studying, just to escape the mountains and change her fate, is back to square one. As for Harvey, he had made enemies in the business world. Now, someone has gained the upper hand over him, leaving him powerless, making a comeback extremely difficult, or rather, impossible. Later, I vaguely heard news about him. It is said that he was retaliated against, with many needles inserted into his body, blood oozing, terrifying passersby. After being taken to the hospital, the rescue was not timely, leaving him paralyzed, turning him into a complete invalid. But all of this has nothing to do with me. I am in another country, a place where spring blossoms, watching the rivers flow, the majestic mountains and rivers. Perhaps my life, belonging to me, has only just begun.